Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Jai.
Can I also record, Prabhu? Give me the permission. You have to give me the permission. Okay. So easy. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today. And today I'll try to do an overview of the Bhagavad Gita in the next 5 sessions through a particular perspective. Let me start with how I became inspired to explore the Bhagavad Gita in this way. Video is not? Yeah, so this is the only webcam. Is my integrated camera better? What's happening? Okay, this is not turning on now. This is strange. I have my phone with, we can set up a Droid cam, but that will take a few minutes. Yeah, most of the time it's a presentation. Okay. Yeah, you can try it quickly. Sorry for the delay. Not fitting in?
Oh, yeah.
It's strange.
It's normally the other way around. Yeah, that's not the right. You should go.
I think we. Okay, try now. Let's put it there.
You will install the driver.
Really?
Let's see what it does. If it can do.
No problem. Let's forget it. We don't have time to install the driver.
Okay.
It's full HD webcam, so nothing is working right now.
Okay. So
we'll just put the other webcam.
Just use your. Yeah.
Just put the other webcam. That's better than what I have. Okay, is this clearer? Just hold it. Is this better than the earlier one?
Yeah.
This is my inbuilt camera. I think this is a little clearer than the webcam.
So I'll remove.
Only for that. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. So oh, what happened? Where is the HDMI? It's not.
No, that's the HDMI.
Okay, somewhat better. Thank you. So, the Bhagavad Gita is a book that I've been studying for more than 25 years now. And for the last 10 years, every day I have been writing an article on the Bhagavad Gita. So, I've been reading it many, many times, and I read several of the commentaries of the Acharyas. And it struck me that each Acharya, especially those in the Bhakti tradition, they analyze the Bhagavad Gita in a different way, but they come to a very similar conclusion. So I'll use a metaphor to explain this, and then I'll try to explain what I'm doing. That many of us in our childhood may have played jigsaw puzzles. So now imagine a jigsaw puzzle. So normally a jigsaw puzzle can be fit together in one correct way. When you put all the pieces together, okay, you get a map of India or you get something attractive. But the Bhagavad Gita is a jigsaw puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle, but it can be fit together in different ways. And the amazing thing is, we fit together in different ways, and yet it comes to the same conclusion. So the same picture comes up, but you can fit it together in different ways. They're not exactly the same picture, but I'll explain what is similar toward the end of the Gita in our course. So the framework I'm using for fitting together the Gita's puzzle, the Gita's jigsaw pieces, is the question-answer format of the Gita. So now the Gita has 700 verses, and we cannot cover 700 verses in 5 sessions. We can't even attempt that. But what we will do is, in the Gita, there are significant transition points. That is, say, Arjuna asks questions intermittently. And generally, when does a person ask a question? The Gita is like a class, but it is less like a class than more like a discussion between two people. And if just a focused discussion between two people, when would somebody ask a question? Generally in 3 situations. First is the most common. We don't understand what the speaker is saying. Second is, we think we understand, but we want to clarify our understanding. And third is where we can't accept what the speaker is saying. That means you could put it in accept it as I can't apply this, I can't believe this. This doesn't seem logical. So basically the point is that whenever questions are asked, generally it is some significant point in the talk, at least significant for the audience. So if you consider the Bhagavad Gita to be like a question-answer session between two people, the questions that Arjuna asks are of special significance. And I'll start with, so we will be focusing on the 17 questions across the 18 chapters that Arjuna asks. And based on that, we will try to see how the various sections of the Gita, not the various verses, but the various sections of the Gita, the various themes of the Gita, they can fit together in a jigsaw puzzle. So the first question may come up, why bother? The Gita was spoken thousands of years ago. And why is it so relevant for us to even try to fit in the Gita's jigsaw puzzle? What are we going to get out of it? To understand that, we can begin with the Gita's first question. So now, in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna speaks his heart. And then in the second chapter, he asks a question. In the first chapter, he's raising some objections. But in the second, is very explicitly asks a question. So the first question by Arjuna is remarkably significant. It is 2.7 in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, now we will recite some of the verses, not all of the verses. So the question Arjuna asks is, Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. He says, I ask you, O Krishna, what is dharma? Now the word dharma has many different meanings. It is a multivalent word. Just like in English, There are many words which are multivalent. Now, among all the words, the word run is supposed to have the maximum meanings. Run is something like 574 meanings. I am running for the elections. I am going for a run. My car is not running. I am running because my car is not running. So we can have many different meanings. Interestingly, in Sanskrit, there are more than 500 words which have more than 500 meanings. So the thing is that when the word dharma is used in the Bhagavad Gita itself, Krishna uses the word dharma in many different meanings. But when Arjuna is asking Puchami Tvam Dharma Sammoha Chetaha in 2.7, he's asking what is the right thing to do. Dharma means the right thing to do. So it's significant. This is the driving question of the bigger book that the Bhagavad Gita is a part of. Which is that book? The Mahabharata. The whole Mahabharata is a search for understanding Dharma. Now the question may come, okay, what is the big deal? Means, why is it so difficult for Arjuna to determine the right thing to do? We understand that to understand why this question is so significant for Arjuna, we have to consider where he asked this question. He's asking this in the middle of a battlefield when the war is about to begin. It's something like, say, if there's an India-Pakistan cricket match and say the World Cup final, maybe in the biggest ground, Eden Gardens, and thousands of people are in the stadium. The millions are watching on television. The toss is done, all the fielders have gone out, the bowler is in the run-up, about to start. And at that time, the strikers calls the non-striker. And in the middle of the pitch, Senayor Ubhayor Madhya. In the middle of the pitch, they two start talking. And they keep talking. They keep talking. They say for more than 2 hours. Now everybody, what is so important? What do you have to talk right now? Why is it that it can't wait? So the situation of the Bhagavad Gita is like that. And it's not that Arjuna is some kind of doing some gamesmanship. In English, there are two words, sportsmanship and gamesmanship. So sportsmanly spirit is where a person plays with the spirit of force. If somebody is taken a catch and they're given out, but this actually the ball touched the ground. They say not out. So sportsmanly is being fair. But gamesmanship is where a person is tricking. So the batsman is batting very well. Then to just break the flow of the batsman, the bowler repeatedly comes running down and stops and then goes back. Comes running down, stops. And just when the bowler is about to bowl, the captain says, let's change the field. So just basically break the rhythm of the opposing batsman. So sometimes, now this is considered, it is not breaking the rule of the law of the game, but it's breaking the spirit of the game. So sometimes players may do gamesmanship like that. Is my audio clear? Or it's okay? So Arjuna is not doing gamesmanship. And how do we know that? Because Arjuna is so agonized, so afflicted with distress that he is in tears. Tam tatha kripaya vishtam ashurupurna kulekshanam. He is in the middle of a battlefield and he is unable to restrain his tears. And it is not just like a few drops are coming down. It's his eyes are filled with tears. Ashurupurna kulekshanam. And now, this itself is significant. So I made 3 points. That first is, this question is not a casual question because it's being asked in a very urgent situation. And second point is that it is also not a trick question to delay procedure because Arjuna is mortified. And now why is he, and he's being so afflicted as to be crying in public. That itself is extremely significant also. Why? Because Arjuna is a warrior. And warriors are trained to not show any pain. Because in a war, it's a ruthless business. Say, I mean, sports is sometimes said to be like war without bullets. Suppose it's like a boxing match going on, and one boxer throws a punch, and say the other boxer has got some injury on the jaw from a previous bout, and then he just grazes a punch. The boxer winces. And if this boxer winces, immediately the other boxers understand, hey, he's vulnerable here. Then hit where it hurts. Exploit the weakness of the opponent. That is a standard strategy in any kind of competition, confrontation, sports, fight, whatever it may be. In cricket, if a batsman cannot play against short pitch balls, then the bowler will shower that batsman with that balls. So basically, those who are in competition, they are trained not to show weakness. So even if your jaw it hurts, don't show it. So Arjuna is a seasoned warrior. He's trained to not show weakness, and one sign of weakness is pain. So if a seasoned warrior like Arjuna is in so much pain, is actually crying tears in public, that indicates how much pain he must feel. Arjuna tells Krishna first, please take me in the middle of the two armies. As I said, and then he observes. See, generally, even if we are overcome by some emotion and we feel like crying, what we will do is, if we are in public, we'll immediately try to go somewhere in private. Excuse me. And we'll try to pull ourselves together. But Arjuna is so overwhelmed that he can't even do that. He is almost paralyzed. So what was the issue? When he's asking what is the right thing to do, why was he so overwhelmed? So that is the context of Arjuna's first question. Let's see if we can find the first question now. So the tension that tore Arjuna apart. So Arjuna's ethical dilemma was that he was torn between two duties, two dharmas, two options or two courses of action, both of which were right in their own place. So what are those two courses of action? One was Kula Dharma. Kula Dharma is what we can call as dynastic duty. Duty towards dynasty. And what is that? We should protect our relatives. We should. Generally, if a person is soft-hearted, a person is kind-hearted, they want to help everyone. As finite beings, we can't help everyone, but at least we try to help as many people as possible. And we try to help at least the people who are connected with us. So especially in a traditional setting where the family was not just nuclear, but a joint family, extended family, taking care of one's family members, taking care of one's dynasty was considered like a basic duty. So protecting one's family members is one duty, that is Kula Dharma. Now, he was also a Kshatriya. Kshatriya is a warrior, a martial guardian of society, to be more precise. That means Kshatriya uses force to protect society from lawbreakers. Ideally speaking, many people get disturbed sometimes when they see that, oh, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken on the battlefield and it is spoken to get someone to fight. They get disturbed by that. Well, yes, that is a concerning matter because we see so much violence in the name of religion in the world today. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that sometimes violence is the only way to stop violence. Say if there is some kind of war breaking out in some African countries, and then the United Nations decides that we will try to bring peace over there. So what do they send? A peacekeeping force. So we want peace, but what do we need? Force for that. So this is a situation that Kshatriyas, it's not that they fight whimsically, fight just because they like to, but when situation demands, they have to fight. So they have to protect society from aggressors. So these are two duties of the same person. But the conflict comes when the aggressors are the relatives. So one duty is we always help our relatives. One duty is that we stop aggressors. But what happens when the relatives become aggressors? So this was the start here. Okay.
Is it coming from this micro?
Okay, it's a good question. Good, you told me about this. Let's see. Yeah, it is. This is the one. Microphone. No, he's not using microphone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay.
सबकस को लो कर दीजिए.
Okay. Okay. By the way,
Can you do this one? You're
Hi.
on the Zoom, bro. You're on the Zoom.
Hare
Somebody,
Krishna,
bro.
Hare.
You're on the Zoom. Yeah, I'm on Zoom. Yeah. Just give.
Hare
Can you make
Krishna.
it high, bro? Now you see where is the difference? You see.
It's up, download the audio enhancer package.
Oh, Krishna.
Okay.
Can you try what is
Medium.
Yeah, medium will enhance it, and also there is a high fidelity. There should be one other option. So kind of.
But just today morning I did something on Zoom. It came out perfectly fine. It's strange. Okay,
let's do the medium. Let's do the medium, and I think we should.
What if is it better now, or is it better?
When you speak, in between it just dips and then.
Okay. Maybe I'll try to moderate my voice then. Okay, let's try. So this was the tension that tore Arjuna apart. So another way to understand it is that we come to a crossroad and the two are pulling us in both directions. And we feel like we have to go on both paths. So what do we do? Now, for Arjuna, this is not just an ordinary ethical dilemma because the consequences are huge. The consequences are there are going to be catastrophic costs, whichever option he chooses. If he sticks to his Kshatriya duty, his warrior duty, what is going to happen is he has to kill his relatives. However, if he sticks to his dynasty duty, he says, I will not fight, then the opposing people, they are led by a vicious person who will exploit society. If Duryodhana would have got unfettered power, while Duryodhana had rule, he did maintain decency because he wanted to win over the citizens. He knew that the Pandavas are going to come and challenge him later. He wanted that people should support me. And so he was generous in giving benefits and gifts and things like that. But if the Pandava challenge had been removed, then his nature would have come out. By nature, he was envious, he was power hungry, he was abusive. And what he did to Draupadi in public, in a public assembly, if he could do that to a royal lady, what would you think he could have done if he had untrammeled power? So that was also one factor. So that's the question of Arjuna. Which duty should I stick to? The Kula Dharma or the Kshatriya Dharma? So to understand the gravity of this, let's compare with a contemporary scenario that so suppose there's a doctor, say we had the COVID pandemic right now, and in the pandemic, say there's a doctor who has got only one medicine, and there are two critically ill patients, and the doctor has to choose, I can give the medicine only to one person, and it's still an iffy situation. If the doctor chooses to give the medicine to one person, the other person will die. But even the person to whom The doctor gives the medicine, whether that person will survive also you don't know. So now imagine, take the situation and multiply it by millions. A person has a choice. If I take one course of action, million people will die. But on the other side also, will these people survive? He's thinking, what will be the cost on the Pandavas himself, on all of them? After all the relatives are killed, Bhishma and Drona are killed. On the other hand, if he doesn't fight, what Duryodhana will do to the citizens, what Duryodhana will do to all of them, there's no guarantee that. It's significant here. Some people feel that, oh, Arjuna just became cowardly. But Arjuna just lost. That Arjuna just lost his nerve. Sometimes when a warrior, when an army goes to fight for the first time, one of my friends in the army, so he says that in the army, the worst thing that a person can do is become a traitor. Means you go and fighting for army and you choose to fight for the opposite. That's a traitor. But the second worst thing that a person in the army can do is become a deserter. That means when all your comrades are there about to fight, you just become fearful and run away. That's a terrible thing. Yeah. Oh, what happened? How does that happen? Okay, stop sharing. Why is the sharing not stopping? There's something I call Tugra Karma. Tugra Karma is technology related Ugra Karma. I guess there is a special dose of that today. Okay. Let's take it. I don't have to show too many slides. But so the point is that so a deserter is considered. Everybody feels fear, but to leave your comrades to die out of the desire to save your own, ones like that is considered to be reprehensible. So some people, Arjuna just lost his nerve, he became a coward. Well, that's not true. Arjuna had faced far worse odds and he hadn't flinched, leave alone fled. Can you think when Arjuna had faced worse odds? Just recently. Virat. Just a few months ago, Arjuna had fought against the entire Kaurava army. And at that time he was alone. Here he had his 5 brothers, he had 7 Akshahunis, he had great warriors. So Arjuna was not simply afflicted by fear. And if you read the first chapter of the Gita, not once does Arjuna express any fear of his own death. Oh, I will die if I fight in this battle. Not once. So to think that Arjuna became cowardly, that could be an obvious reading of the situation, but it is categorically wrong. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita's beginning of the 2nd chapter, Krishna plays that role. He says, Arjuna, you cannot become a coward like this. Kutastva kashmalamidam vishame samapastha. Anarajushtama swargama kirti karma. Klaivyam masmagama partha naitattvaya upatyate. Shudram de daurbalyam tektotishthata. He says, give up this fear, give up this weakness of heart. And Arjuna bristles in anger. Why? Because if we are doing something out of a noble motive and somebody misunderstands that and ascribes ignoble motive, say, when prasad is being served and there are cake servings for everyone, and we have taken one serving of the cake and we are taking another serving for a devotee who is coming late. And why are you taking 2 servings for yourself? Why do you presume like that? You will feel, don't you know me anymore? Why would you think I would do something like this? So Arjuna bristles in anger. He says, that's not my motivation. Katham Bhishma Maham Sanke Dronam Chamadasuda. Ishuri Patiyotsyami Puja Rama. Says, this is not a situation I have become cowardly. Says, I am ethically tormented. This is Just put it, Krishna, put yourself in my situation. Would you be able to shoot arrows at your guru, Sandipani Muni? Would you be able to shoot arrows at your grandfather, Ugrasena? That's why he says, Are Sudana, you are the killer of your enemies. And I have to fight against my guru and against my teacher, against my grandfather. So he is vehement over it. And then he says that it's better that I die than enjoy a kingdom that is with the spoils of the blood of such elders. But then, although he vehemently, it's remarkable the shift in Arjuna's mood. 2.4 and 2.5, Arjuna is quite vehement. How dare you think like this? But after Arjuna has spoken that in 2.6, his mood changes because the dilemma still remains. He doesn't want the world to misunderstand that he's fleeing out of, he's not fleeing, he's not fled, but he's hesitating out of cowardice. But at the same time, his dilemma remains. What should I do? So this is a very serious situation. And then at that time also, what happens is Arjuna asks a question which is universal. And that's what makes the Gita relevant. Now I discussed about the Kula Dharma and Kshatriya Dharma. And we say, okay, all this is about a war that happened thousands of years ago. How does it matter to me? It matters to us because Arjuna universalizes his dilemma. Arjuna does not ask Krishna, should I fight? Arjuna asks, what is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? So he's asking a universal question. And Krishna also gives universal answers. For those who feel a little disturbed by the battlefield context of the Gita, I think that Krishna spoke the Gita to get Arjuna to fight. Well, that is an extremely oversimplified understanding of Krishna's intent in speaking the Gita. If Krishna had wanted Arjuna to fight, generally, if we want to get someone to fight, what is the easiest way to do that? Yeah, I think provoke them. And generally, how can we provoke them? Insult them? Well, no, we want them to be our friends. We don't want them to attack us. We want them to attack someone else. Speak something negative, speak something terrible. Basically, incite, generally provoke means we incite emotions, incite anger. And that is a very easy way to manipulate people. Now, if, yeah, maybe some of you can come ahead, please. Some of you can come here also. So when Krishna speaks the Gita, if Krishna's purpose had been just to get Arjuna to fight, Krishna had a very easy way to do that. And it's remarkable that Krishna does not use it at all. Even an ordinary person, if they're reminded about how their family was dishonored, if an ordinary man is reminded about how his wife was insulted, that man would get provoked. And Arjuna is a powerful warrior capable of punishing anyone. So Krishna could have easily incited Arjuna to fight by just reminding him how Duryodhana, Dushasana, Karna, Shakuni, all of them had gleefully laughed and diabolically tried to disrobe him. And that would have made Arjuna's blood boil. That would have been enough for Arjuna to fight. It's remarkable that Krishna does not use this at all. In fact, in the entire Gita, there is not a single reference to any circumstantial reason for fighting. You see, it's a battle for a kingdom, But Krishna doesn't even once mention, oh, how prosperous the kingdom you will get, or anything like that. There's not a single reference to that. It's like, if you can eat food like this, why eat like this? So, if Krishna had wanted to get Arjuna to fight, there's an easy way, straight, just incite Arjuna, reminding of Draupadi's dishonor. Enough. Would have been enough. And it's not that Krishna doesn't do this. Krishna does it later. On the 17th day, when he's about to fight Karna, Arjuna is about to fight Karna, Krishna does speak that. So it's not that Krishna has forgotten. Krishna doesn't forget. But it's significant that in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is speaking, Krishna is responding to Arjuna's universal question by giving universal principles for decision making, by teaching a message that is universal. And that is what makes the Gita relevant for all of us. What is the right thing to do? That is Arjuna's question. And in answering that question, Krishna doesn't refer much to the context at all. Wherever, because they are on the battlefield, and circumstantially, Arjuna has to fight. That is the right thing for him to do. But the Gita's message is not that everyone should fight. Not at all. So, this universal question and universal answer, universal principles of decision making and living, that is what makes the Gita relevant. So that's the first question. Now, in one sense, I said, how many questions are there in the Gita? 70. So we could say, in one sense, the entire Gita is an answer to this one question. And within the answer to this one question, all the remaining questions come up. So it's not like question one is answered, question second question begins after the answer to the first question, and third question is after the answer to the second question. It's not like that. It's like in the answer to one question, there are the remaining 16 questions. So the entire Gita is about Dharma. I want to know what is the right thing. So any questions about the first question? Yes, please. There's no Mama Dharma. Prichhami tvam Mama Dharma. No Mama there at all. If you see Karpanya Dosho Pahata Swabhava, Prichhami tvam Dharma. He's acknowledging that I am overcome by weakness. But okay, sorry. So the question is that, isn't it that Arjuna is asking about my dharma? So Arjuna is not using the word Mama Dharma. Prichhami tvam Dharma Sammudha Cheta. So there is no reference to Karpanya Dosho Pahata Swabha, Prichhami tvam Dharma Sammudha Cheta. Yashreyasya Nishitam Bruhitanme, Shishyasteham Shadhimam Tam Prapata. So tell me what is Shreya. Tell me, I become your disciple. So the remaining verses are about the mode in which he's approaching. So you could say, first verse is about his situation, his emotion. The third and fourth verse are about his disposition. First line, third and fourth line. Sorry. The second line is about a specific question, and it is a universal question. Tvam dharma sammudha cheta. That is true, no doubt about it. But if you see, how much does Krishna address Arjuna's specific bewilderment? Where does Krishna talk about? Krishna doesn't go into any past life stories. Why he has to fight against his guru. Maybe you did this in this life and they did that in that life, and that's why you're in this situation. Krishna doesn't address Arjuna's specific dilemma much. Krishna uses universal principles, okay? Universal frame of analysis. Any other questions? Okay. So now, in answering Arjuna's question, I will not go over the entire Gita over there, but I'll just talk quickly to the flow from the first question to the second question. So then, in answering Arjuna's question, Krishna says, before you can understand your activity, you have to understand your identity. Your identity. And thus he brings in the concept of you are essentially a spiritual. And after bringing that identity, it's what am I supposed to do if I have to answer this question? So Krishna says that, okay, you have right now two functional identities. One functional identity is that you are a Kuru Nandan, you are a member of the Kuru dynasty. Another functional identity is that you are a Kshatriya. And you are torn because of these two functional identities. But actually, you have a fundamental identity that underlies both these identities. And focus on that. Because at the level of functional identity, you will feel torn. So imagine somebody is a judge. And they're known for always being fair and assessing any accused who comes before them. And see, today, that judge's own son is accused of murder and is being arraigned for capital punishment. Now, what should the judge do? Am I a judge or am I a father? So these are two functional identities, they're pulling apart. So Arjuna was like that. So Krishna says, at the level of functional identity, you will not be able to solve the problem. So first go down to your fundamental identity. You are a soul. And then he says, all these warriors are also souls. They are eternal, you are eternal. You are not actually killing them. They are on their spiritual journey, you are on your spiritual journey. And that is just like changing the bodily dress. So focus on what will help in your spiritual evolution and help in their spiritual evolution. And in that connection, Krishna talks about various things, but he talks about working with detachment. And so basically from 2.11, when Arjuna Krishna starts speaking, till 2.53, Krishna traces the path of spiritual evolution. And he concludes by saying that those people who function in this way, with the detachment, doing their duties, they will attain samadhi. Samadha vachala buddhis. Krishna says their intelligence will become fixed. And they will attain enlightenment. They will attain liberation. And it is that at that time that Arjuna says, wait a minute. What happens is, one of the biggest problems in communication, specifically in educative communication, is that the teacher speaks in terms of concepts and the student thinks in terms of images. The teacher, okay, this is the concept, this is the concept. So Arjuna is being told by Krishna that there are these enlightened people. There are these enlightened people. Now Arjuna is in a battlefield. He's trying to think, who is Krishna referring to? What are these enlightened people? He's trying to put a face, put an image to that concept. And therefore he asks, okay, I ask the question about these enlightened people. So let's recite this verse. Most of you, okay, I should share my screen first. So most of you know this verse. We'll recite 2.54 and then we will discuss this question. Arjuna Vacha Sthita Pragyasya Ka Bhasha Samadhistasya Keshava Sthitadhi Kim Prabhasheta Kim Asita Vrajeta Kim. So Sthita Pragyasya Ka Bhasha. What is the language? Let's look at the literal meaning of this verse, and then we will see one of the aspects of the Gita which makes it both fascinating and bewildering. So the question is, Sthita Pragyasya Ka Bhasha. What is their language? Samadhi Stasya Keshava. We are just talking about those people in Samadhi. So those situated like that. Sthitadhi Kim Prabhasheta. How do they speak? Kim Asita. How do they sit? Vrajeta Kim. How do they walk? Now, if we take this question literally, there's a problem with that. How do they sit? How do they walk? is Arjuna asking about a fashion model who sits in a particular pose, who walks with a particular gait? What does this question mean? It seems completely out of context in that. So the Gita is a work of poetry. Bhagavad Gita, song of God. Or we could say it's a philosophical treatise in the form of a poem. And in poems, in poetry, quite often non-literal usage is common. The non-literal usage means there's a literal meaning of the word and there's a non-literal meaning of the word. So, if somebody says he has got an axe to grind, that doesn't literally mean he's going to pick up an axe and grind it. It means this person has some personal agenda and the person wants to get back at it. I was in Leicester, in UK, and there was a youth meeting, and there were a lot of fiery question answers after that. And the question answer session went fairly well. So after that, the organizer came to me with a big, bright smile on his face. And he says, "You killed it." I was alarmed. What did I kill? I said, "Am I sitting on some insect or something and I killed that insect?" So what had happened was, he was speaking from non-literally. The killed it, the verb killed it usage comes from the hunting context. Now in hunting, if people go hunting and somebody shoots it, is able to hit the target. So now most people don't approve hunting, but they don't even know it. People use it. You killed it. So he was saying, you killed it means well done. You hit the target. The question answer is what. So he was speaking non-literally, and I was taking it literally. And he was speaking it non-literally without realizing that he was speaking it non-literally. Because what happens? Some non-literal usages become so common that we don't even notice that it's non-literal. And when two people know each other very well, then when somebody is speaking literally and when somebody is speaking non-literally, it's very easy to understand. If two people share the same mental world, same cultural concepts, so that's why translation is a tough job. In Hindi, say there is a saying, "Laaton ke bhoot, baaton se nahi mante." Now, if we translate this into English, the ghosts of kicks don't learn with words. Now, what does that mean? It just doesn't make any sense. So what has happened is there is a metaphor. We're not talking literally about ghosts of kicks. So what happens in normal conversation? There is many times when we use non-literal language, and those who are in that cultural context, they understand it very easily. So Krishna and Arjuna are having a conversation, and in that conversation, Arjuna is asking a question. Actually, it's one question which contains 4 questions. But he is asking it non-literal. And Krishna immediately understands that it's non-literal. And that's why Krishna also answers that non-literal. So let's try to understand what Arjuna's question exactly was. I can give many examples of literal. Yeah, I'll do that. So, what is their language? So the question, what is the question over here? What now language is bhasha is related with bhashya. Bhashya is characteristic. So language is that which is used to describe characteristics. So when he says, what is their language? That means what are their characteristics? So here bhasha is used in a non-literal sense. It's not that some self-realized people have some special secret language in which they speak. Different people have, different professionals have their own jargon. Two brain surgeons will talk in a particular way that may seem like, the patients are looking, there's a foreign language movie going on. You just don't understand anything. So, but it's Krishna is not referring that these enlightened people have some special language. That is, it is what are their characteristics? And kim prabhasheta, how do they speak? What does that mean? That generally we speak in response to life situations. So the question here is, how do they respond to life's ups and downs? And then kim asita, how do they sit and how do they walk? What he means by that is, how do they restrain their senses? Our senses are the means by which we act. So how do they become inactive? How do they withdraw themselves? When they are provoked, how do they avoid that provocation? And how do they act? That means, how do they engage their senses? How do they function? And in Arjuna's context, what do these questions mean? First of all, Arjuna is thinking, okay, if Krishna wants me to act on the path of spiritual evolution for spiritual growth, how am I actually meant to act? So it's interesting that Krishna answers the first two questions very quickly. In 2.55, he answers the first. In 56 and 57, he answers the second. In third and fourth, he answers elaborately. Why? Because those are the two questions that are relevant for Arjuna. This is also, as we go through the 17th question, we'll also see how Krishna is an expert teacher and how Arjuna is a diligent student. So generally, sometimes some people ask questions, and sometimes they ask very long questions, and there are two reasons. One is that they're not asking question to gain knowledge; they're asking question to show knowledge. And another is that when they start asking a question, they themselves don't know what question they're asking. And so they start asking, oh, that's not what I meant. That's what I meant. And it just goes on. Then sorry? Yeah. Then the speaker has to figure out what is the question. And sometimes in that one question, there are 4 or 5 questions. Then the speaker has to decide, okay, which part of the question should I focus on? The speaker may decide, okay, for this person, if they know that person, or for that audience, if they know the audience, this is the part I'll focus on. So for Arjuna, when he says Kim Asita Vrajeta Kim, Arjuna is overwhelmed by emotions. He has to withdraw, he has to pull back from his emotions. Yada samharite chayam, what Krishna will tell. What happened? Yada samharite. Akashwari. Is it telling that I should end the class now? So, Arjuna, later Krishna will say that as a tortoise withdraws its limbs, withdraw your senses. So, Arjuna, when you are fighting, withdraw your senses from Bhishma and Drona. They are not, although they may be prominent in your vision, they do not define the opposing army. It is Duryodhan, Dushasan, and people like them that define the army. So the emotions that have overwhelmed Arjuna, if he has to restrain those emotions, he has to asita, he has to withdraw his senses. And that's why Krishna talks about the method for withdrawing the senses. And then Arjuna can't just withdraw his senses. He can't say, oh, I'll close my eyes over here. No, Arjuna has to fight in the war. So Prajeta, how does a person function? How do the self-realized people function? How do they engage their senses? So Krishna will focus on these two questions. See, the Prabhasheta and Bhasha. On a war, there's not much talking to do. Of course, at the start of the Kurukshetra war, there's much talking that happened in the Bhagavad Gita. But after that, it's more action fighting. So in fighting, there are sometimes some battles you have to avoid fighting. So how to withdraw the senses, how to engage the senses. That is most relevant for Arjuna. And that is what Krishna focuses on in his answer. So to summarize, the link between the first and second question. First question describes what is the right thing to do. To understand the right thing to do, you have to understand your identity and act according to your identity for pursuing spiritual evolution. So what do the spiritually evolved souls look like? If I were a spiritually evolved soul, or if I were seeking spiritual evolution, how would I act? And that is the second question, and then Krishna answers that question. So, any questions about the second question? Later questions will go much faster, but the first question was important for setting the context of the Gita. Yes, please.
I have a question regarding, so it could be taken in literally two ways. One is when we're talking about, translation or understanding the Sanskrit. So it's as a language, so it could be taken as, by Sanskrit scholars, it's most of a like, it can be taken as a poetry. So it's as like language, it's beautiful, it's beautiful and sort of that. But if you talk in terms of bhakti or someone who's coming from a bhakti perspective like Prabhupada, he brings in another perspective. So I was just understanding for this question, like, understanding this, which is more important, or how do we like, is it like a linguist perspective that we're going to talk about that, when you're talking about metaphorically, so you say that how do they speak? So you translated it to how do they respond to life's ups and downs. So is this a linguist perspective or,
Okay, is this that this is the meaning of this verse? What is this a linguistic perspective? Well, I am largely focusing on, as I said, the metaphor of the Bhagavad Gita as a jigsaw puzzle. So I'm looking at what are the answers that are given by Krishna and seeing how the answers link with the questions. So from that perspective, Asita, if you see at least the word Vrajeta, Krishna uses a very similar word in 264. What is it? Raga Dvesha Muktestu Vishayan Indriyescharan Atmavashe Nidhe Atma Prasadam Adhikachi. Raga Dvesha Muktestu Vishayan Indriyescharan. Charan and Vraja, they're very similar words. Charan is to move, Vraja is to move. And then if we consider Kim Asita, Asit is to rest. And that is very similar to Yada Samharti Chayam, Kurmo Angani Sarvasha. I think as far as this categorization is concerned, almost all the Acharya, Baldev Devotion, Chakravarti, both of them say that the first half is the first answer. And exactly there is variation. Say some say 57 to 61, some say till 63. That can vary depending on how we analyze it. But essentially, the major part is the answer to the last two questions. And that's why there are two metaphors also over there regarding uncontrolled senses. One is the metaphor of withdrawal. That is the tortoise. I always had this question: what is the relationship 258 and 267? When Krishna is talking about controlling the senses, why is he repeating two metaphors over there? So 258 is more about restraint, inactivity. So a tortoise withdraws its senses, we should also withdraw our senses. So whenever we are getting agitated by something, at that time we need to withdraw. But then 267 is Indriyanam Charatam Yanmano Vidyate Tadasya Harati Pragyam Vayu Navam Mamasi. That is active metaphor. That's not an inactive or a passive metaphor. It is like a person is going on a boat, and if the person, that's their profession, they have to go on the boat. They can't avoid it. But they have to be aware of the danger. When wind comes, it will sweep me away. Therefore, what I need to do is be alert. If there is a stormy zone, I don't travel in that stormy zone. So Krishna is saying that while we are acting in the world, there are times when we can just withdraw from provocative, tempting situations. But there are times when we are acting in the world, even at that time, we cannot allow ourselves to be swept away by passion, swept away by emotion. So we need to be aware, okay, when I get into this kind of situation, when I meet this kind of people, like we all have some people, maybe our spiritual master, our spiritual guides, who bring out the best within us. But we all have some people who seem to bring out the worst within us. Just by seeing that person, just by the existence of that person, we become angry. Maybe that person doesn't do anything at all. They just exist and we get angry. Of course, they might have done something in the past. But if we are fair, they just seem to bring out the worst within us. So then we have to be ultra cautious in dealing with it. Because what is happening is that like this wind is coming. The stormy wind is coming, it will sweep us away. So those two answers are prominent in it. So this whole analysis is based largely on the textual flow of the Gita. And okay, how do the Gita's verses and Gita's concepts fit together? Any other question? Yes.
before, Pita Pragya mentioned, is not necessarily referring to a bhakti yogi, right? This is someone who like self-reliant, right? Like, this is someone who's like a jnani,
Yes.
Brahman-realized person.
See, in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada focuses on the Gita's conclusion, and he gives the conclusion throughout the Gita. That is his, we could say, his singular focus on ensuring that the conclusion is never missed. That's his compassion. Prabhupada also says at times that, people, even they take one book, even they take one book and read one page from that book, they should find a conclusion. At the same time, there are places where it's not that Prabhupada is simply giving a bhakti conclusion, everywhere. Prabhupada is aware of the flow of the Gita, especially if you look at the last verses of a chapter or the first verses of a chapter. There you will see that Prabhupada talks about the flow. So, for example, in the end of the second chapter, in the last verse, the start of the first chapter, Prabhupada says, in this chapter, we're talking about the second chapter, in this chapter, a hint of Bhakti Yoga has been. That's what Prabhupada says. Prabhupada has not given a hint. Prabhupada has given the full picture. Prabhupada is quoting Savai Manha Krishna Padaravinda. Prabhupada is quoting Ambarish Maharaj, how he engages all his senses in Bhakti. So, Prabhupada is using a particular approach to commenting on the Gita. He is aware of the textual flow and he hints about the textual flow. But Prabhupada is not getting into technicalities much in the Gita. Prabhupada is making sure, out of compassion, that the essential conclusion is consistently emphasized and not missed in the technicality of it. From the flow of the Gita, Krishna has not mentioned bhakti much till now. So, in that sense, here Krishna is talking about somebody who follows karma yoga and then comes to spiritual realization. Now, these characteristics can apply to a bhakti yogi, they can apply to a jnana yogi, they can apply to a karma yogi. Anybody who is spiritually evolved, these characteristics can apply to them. It's not that they don't apply to them. So there are three things. First is that Prabhupada has given bhakti commentary, and I'll explain why. Second is, in the flow of the Gita, if you look at the textual flow, it is Krishna referring to the mature karma yogi. But these characteristics apply to everyone. So when we quote them as characteristics that devotees can internalize, that is also valid. Okay, so let's, you had a question?
So, I recall correctly, Prabhupada says here that the most important way to identify somebody by his speech. In light of what you explained, is the idea that how they are actually restraining their senses or engaging the senses is reflected in the speech? That idea, or is talking about the second question about how they speak is the most important?
Okay, that's a good question. See, when Prabhupada focuses on how they speak as the most important characteristic of a person, Prabhupada is focusing us giving that answer from the Bhakti Yoga perspective. If Prabhupada, when George Harrison met him, and George Harrison asked, there are so many spiritual teachers who come from India. So how do we know who's authentic? And Prabhupada said, look at the Bhagavad Gita. That is the primary book from India. And that talks about Krishna, devotion to Krishna. So I accept that. I accept that there is that devotion to Krishna is a conclusion. But there could be so many who are very devoted to Krishna. Then Prabhupada says that, okay, if somebody claims to be a devotee to Krishna, are they talking about Krishna? They say they're devoted to Krishna, but they practically never talk about Krishna. They talk about everything else, even in the name of spirituality. Then where is their devotion to Krishna? So in the path of bhakti, especially, our spiritual connection is established primarily through sound vibration, through the tongue. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So Shravanam involves somebody else speaking and me hearing. Kirtanam involves me speaking. And Shravanam and Kirtanam are the easiest ways to do Smaranam. So from that perspective, Prabhupada is saying that the most important characteristic of a person is their speech. Now we all know it. Prabhupada also talked about people who, in his purpose, people who may speak very attractively, but they lack character. Prabhupada is not talking about those kind of people. He's talking about a person is enlightened, but how do we know that they're enlightened? What is the content of their speech? Of course, they have to walk their talk, as they say. But in bhakti, we may say walk your talk. That is true. But in bhakti, talking is also a part of the walking. In fact, we may say talking is a major part of the walking. Because by speaking also, we are connecting with Krishna. So I will just quickly take the third question and then we will pause over here. So by the end of the second chapter, in one sense, Krishna has summarized it. So what happens is, say, when a speaker is speaking and the audience is hearing, so at best, generally the audience will get about 20% of what the speaker spoke. And God knows which 20%. So what happens towards the end of the second chapter, Krishna talks about Shanti twice in 270 and 271. He says, Apu Vimana Machila Pratishtam Samudramapa Pravishanti Taddat Kamayam Pravishanti Sarve Sa Shanti Mapnoti Na Kamaka Shanti Mapnoti. The person attains peace. Vihaya Kamanya Sarvan Pumansh Chardin Stuha Nirmamo Nirahankara Sa Shanti Madhigachati. This person attains peace. Now what is happening is Krishna mentions this word peace, and Arjuna catches that word. Arjuna's attention goes to that word. Thinking, if peace is the purpose, then just stop fighting, isn't it? So that's why he asks, why are you asking me to jayasijat karmanasti matta buddhirjanada tapkim karmani ghore mam niyasikesh vyameshrene vakya buddhim mohyasi tadekam badanishchitta yeno shreyo. So what is it that you want me to do? You want me to fight or not fight? So that is Arjuna's question. So contextually, it comes from that Shanti. So what happens is words have the meaning of the philosophy of language. It's understood that the meaning of words is not just in the words. It is also in the context in which the word is used. And we also Krishna is talking about Shanti. Oh, sorry, why is this over here? How long has this been screen? No, but why is that coming over there? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think what happens is you're sharing your. If I keep full screen, it seems that it doesn't change over. Okay. But it's not going for Zoom for people. That is good. So the meanings of words are not just in their context, in their words, in their context. So Krishna is talking about inner peace. And Arjuna is thinking about what? Outer peace, external peace. And that's why there is a mismatch. Say, if a mother says to a child, use the bat to hit a ball, not hit a bat. Now, what does that mean? Maybe there's a bat hanging upside down, the insect, and the child is about to hit it. Hey, don't hit the bat. The bat is going to hit the ball. So the word bat is the same word, but what is happening is, in different contexts, it's referring to different things. So Shanti, that's the word which Arjuna catches. Now specifically, when Arjuna asks a question, there is 2.49 in the Gita, which Arjuna is referring to. That so let's look at this. It's a little technical, but it is an important point over here. Yeah. So this is a conceptual confusion that Arjuna has. So Arjuna's thinking is a bit of a polar thinking. He is thinking work or renunciation. Those are the two options. Now, connecting with his Kula Dharma and Kshatriya Dharma. So if he's going to follow Kshatriya Dharma, what will he have to do? Work. He says his duty to fight. He's a warrior. If he's going to follow Kula Dharma, what will he have to do? Renounce. He says, as already said, Vaiksham api haloke. It is better that I'll beg and live. I cannot fight against my relatives. So I'll have to renounce. So Arjuna is thinking of these are my two options. Either I work or I renounce. And Krishna seems to have made it very clear that Arjuna should work. Karmanyevadikaraste mahaphalesu kadachana. But Krishna has also said you will gain peace. So Arjuna gets confused. You're recommending this path, but you're telling the result of this path. How does that work? So what has happened is that Krishna has actually given an integrated solution. That you can work in a mode of renunciation. So instead of working and renouncing as two distinct things, Krishna says you can have an internal mode of renunciation. So what does the internal mode of renunciation mean for Arjuna specifically? Is that Arjuna is not fighting to kill Bhishma and Drona. Arjuna is fighting because it is his duty to protect society. And in the process of protecting society, it is unfortunate that he'll have to fight against Bhishma and Drona. But if Arjuna is not personally attached to the kingdom, then he is not really causing the death of Bhishma. There is a duty to be performed, and in the performance of duty, he has to fight. So they're two different things. So Krishna is talking about working in a mode of renunciation. But this is something Arjuna just doesn't get it. It's like somebody who is only habituated to black and white. You tell them about shades of gray. Is it black? Is it white? No, it's gray. No, is it black? Is it white? What happens is there is the middle, and often it's a muddle in the middle. The muddle in the middle. Those are used to this whole black and white. What do you mean? So Arjuna doesn't get it. And that's why what happens is Krishna will start rephrasing, re-articulating his message in a more systematic way. So Arjuna's question has come because of this reason that, as I mentioned, the immediate reason for Arjuna's question is that the reference to Shanti. Now Krishna is referring to the inner peace achieved by selfless work, that is karma yoga. As Arjuna thinks that the peace means outer peace achieved by giving up fighting. So I discuss about words. Now, the specific question is, buddhi is better than karma. So Krishna is talking about this contrast between buddhi and karma in 248 to 50. And he says, Durena yavaram karma, keep away bad activities. That is the key confusion that Arjuna has. So Durena yavaram karma, buddhi yoga dhananjaya. So if you see karma and buddhi, jayasi chet karmanaste, buddhi yoga dhananjaya. So you have recommended buddhi over karma. And Arjuna equates avaram karma. So Krishna, avaram karma means inauspicious work. So Krishna says, what is inauspicious work? It is working with attachment. Whereas Arjuna thinks, what is avaram karma? It is fighting. That will lead to the killing of one's relatives. And that's why there is this confusion. And it is this confusion that Krishna will resolve in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th chapters. So Arjuna will actually ask the same question in the 5th chapter again, because this is a foundational confusion. But at this point in the Bhagavad Gita, the 3rd question which Arjuna has asked leads to the elaborate answer of it. It's like sometimes we ask a question and somebody gives such a succinct answer that it's like, okay, the only thing that I understood is that I understood nothing. If that is the case, what happens is, okay, now I need to understand more clearly. So can you please elaborate on this? So that's what, in one sense, from the 3rd chapter onwards, it is Krishna is himself giving like a commentary on the 2nd chapter. An elaborate commentary, not a verse by verse commentary. It's not that Krishna is saying this verse means this. He's giving the conceptual explanation is given. So that we will discuss in our future sessions. I'll quickly summarize what we discussed today. So I started by talking about the way we are approaching the Bhagavad Gita. It's like a jigsaw puzzle which can be fit together in many different ways, but it comes to the same picture at the end. So we are trying to fit the Bhagavad Gita jigsaw puzzle through the 17 questions that Arjuna has asked. And why bother so much about studying the Gita? Because it is a universally important book. Because its questions are universal. The driving question is, what is the right thing to do? And this question, why does Arjuna get The question is significant because Arjuna is asking this in a battlefield in the middle. It is such an urgent situation. Why is he asking it? Because he's torn between two duties, his Kula Dharma and his Kshatriya Dharma. And that agony is so great that a warrior who is trained to hide weakness and pain is crying publicly, uncontrollably. So it's an agonizing dilemma for him. And Krishna also answers it in universal terms. If Krishna's purpose had been just to get Arjuna to fight, he could have just reminded him about Draupadi's being dishonored. But not once does Krishna refer to any circumstantial reasons for fighting. Because he wants to give universal principles for living and decision making. And he begins by to understand, to avoid, to resolve your dilemma, you have to go beyond these two functional identities to your fundamental identity. And see yourself as a soul, see others as soul, and act in a way that will further everyone's spiritual evolution. Then when he talks about the characteristics of a spiritually realized person, Krishna is talking in conceptual terms. So Arjuna wants to understand it more clearly, put an image on that. That's why he asks questions. And because the Bhagavad Gita is a poetic work, so the questions are asked in non-literal terms. But from the context, we understand what it means. And Krishna focus among the 4 questions that are asked, Krishna focuses on those two Kimasi that are most relevant for Arjuna. How can he withdraw his senses so that he won't weaken by looking at Bhishma and Drona? And how can he fight without being swept away by passion? So that's the focus. But towards the end, because Krishna uses the word Shanti, and Krishna has contrasted that, avoid avaram karma. So Arjuna gets confused. And basically, the cause of there's a textual basis and there's a conceptual basis for confusion. So the conceptual is Arjuna is thinking of 2 options, and Krishna is offering the 2 as integrated. So that integration hasn't clicked for Arjuna. So work or renounce, Krishna is saying work in a mood of renunciation. Work, now renunciation might seem a little abstract word for us. We could say what in a more relatable word is work with selflessness. Work selflessly. That selfless work is what Krishna will elaborate in the 3rd chapter onwards. And that's why the next question that Arjuna will ask is, what changes us from selfless to not just selfish, but self-destructive? That will be the question about karma, which we'll discuss in our next session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande. I think there's an overdose of questions today. So we'll have time for questions in our future sessions also. I think we have to go for many of you may want to go for the Bhakti Thakur program. So thank you very much. Hare